Hello hattrickers, welcome back to this video. This time about wingback cycle training, and I've made a plan for you guys to see. Actually, I've made two variations of the plan. I've made a standard variation and a variation for under 21s play as well. You could also call this a budget version because it will be slightly cheaper on wages. And we've also included a little something about set pieces takers because wingbacks often get that job in teams as well. But before we go on, I would just like to thank all of the guys who've been subscribing to the channel so far. The channel is actually growing a lot faster than I've anticipated, and I'm so happy that you guys are actually, well, pushing the button. So thank you for that. Alright, initially we have to take a look at the players we want to bring into our team or hopefully pull up from the academy to start training. And for the standard player, we are looking for something like a 17-year-old, obviously, solid defending, 7, inadequate playmaking, that's level 5, solid in wing, 5 in passing, scoring and set pieces are kinda irrelevant at this point. The target at 30 years old would be 17 mythical defending, 12 playmaking, 17 winger, 8 passing, scoring not really relevant, and around 8 in set pieces. If we talk about a set piece taker, we will have to add a little in either defending or winger. So defender, excellent 8, for playmaking, 7 winger, perhaps excellent, 4 passing, scoring irrelevant, and we'll need something extra for set pieces as well. I've set it at 6 here, but you could go a little lower, obviously. The target skills for 30-year-old would be 17 defending, 11 playmaking, 15 winger, 8 passing, scoring irrelevant, and set pieces at 20. Talking specialties, all the 5 standard specialties are actually relevant for players at the wingback position. Powerful player would obviously be strong in order to man mark as well, and sometimes players utilize their wingbacks as the man marker. They're also excellent for the pressing tactic, obviously. You could also use a header, and while he defends and attacks corners, he's vulnerable to technical opposition players. Bear in mind, if you are looking to train players for national team play, technical players will be more common simply because there's no man marking in international games. Quick wingbacks are very nice in order to stop quick players 1-to-1. So if you have a quick right winger in the opposing team, you could play a left wingback and he would never get a quick event. Quick wingbacks also defend well against counter-attacking teams as well. Quick players are very popular at the high levels, so bringing in a high-level quick wingback is always a good choice. Technical wingbacks are useful because they can actually start a non-tactical counterattack for your team. Unpredictable wingbacks are useful as well because they can dribble past an opponent and make a pass, or they can make the long pass. They do need extra passing though, because if they fail the long pass, they may actually end up starting a counterattack for your opponent instead. Alright, let's move on to the standard variation. The pros of the standard variation is that you get tactical flexibility because you train all of the defense in one go. That means you won't be limited to having 5 defenders in your formation after you've trained defending. This also means you can add your half-baked players at an earlier stage, and in this situation you could go for wingers or defensive wingers even. Adding defensive wingers to your cycle will mean that you can add them even earlier. This means that if you compare it to the under 21s variation, you will be competitive at an earlier stage. There's also a good profit potential because you train main skills for a longer period of time. The cons about this variation is that you'll have to pay expensive wages because you will train all the way to mythical defending in one go, and then potentially all the way to mythical winger in one go as well. That means you'll have to pay a lot of wages for a long time. Compared to other cycle variants, especially the popular inner midfielder ones, you will have fewer core players. Let's look at the training cycle bits here, starting out with 5.5 seasons defense, and then we move on to 3 seasons of wing. At this point, starting to train wing, you could add wingers half-baked with a good bunch of playmaking already trained. You could also start a little earlier even, and then you train defensive wingers instead. That's up to you. Then we train 2.5 seasons playmaking, and then a season's training of passing, and at this point your players will be 28 years old. Training from this point on will depend completely on your team's situation. You could be in a situation where you need extra playmaking for your midfield, it could be extra passing for your attack ratings, or it could even be extra set pieces. So I will not give a concrete answer to what to train beyond the age of 28. That's up to you, and that's part of being a good manager. That is to decide carefully what your team needs in a competitive scenario. I've broken the standard variation up in a seasonal overview here. A few of the rows are condensed because it's just the same training type. For instance, from the age of 17 to 19, you'll be training 3 seasons of defense. There's nothing to note there. Another example is the age of 20 to 21. Some of them are marked with a slash because you would swap halfway. That could, for instance, be year 25, where you swap between wing and playmaking. Also note that at the age of 27, and perhaps even the year before, you would have to increase stamina in order to start playing competitively. That's the standard variation done. Let's move on to the under 21s variation. The pros about this variation is that you'll have cheaper wages because you will not train all of the defending in one go, or all of the winger for that matter. Your players may get extra experience because they get to play on the national team. And hey, they get to play on the national team. That's pretty cool. The cons here is you lose tactical flexibility because you have to move back to a variation where you have to play with 5 defenders if you want to train for the profit fully. That also means that you will be less competitive, or at least at a later stage in the cycle. Again, when you compare to the most popular cycle training, the inner midfielder training, you will have fewer core players at the end. Let's look at the training cycles in this variation. We start out with 2.5 seasons of defense, and then we move on to a season and a half of wing training. At this point, your player will be 21 years old, and you need to bump the stamina at some point during the wing training because you need excellent stamina for the player if he is to have a chance for a call up to the under 21 squad. Exactly how much is up to the coach, so you would need guidance from either the coach or a scout from the nation you're training for. Then we move back to approximately 3.3 seasons of defense. The real point here is to hit mythical defending. Then we move back to wing for a season and a half. This is the point where you can add half-baked wingers to your cycle. You could even add these while training defense if you want to train defensive wingers, but that's up to you. Then we train playmaking for 2.5 seasons. At this point, we hit the 28 years of age, and we have to be flexible and look at the actual needs of the team in order to determine what training is the best, not just for the core players, but for the whole team. This is the variation broken up to a seasonal overview. Again, there's notes whenever we have to pay a special attention to things here, like increasing the stamina around the age of 21, and again, increasing the stamina when we are starting to play competitively around the age of 26, 27. Again, this all comes down to where your team is at and what it actually needs in the scenario it is in. Final thoughts here on training wingbacks in a cycle. Hattrick is a game that requires patience. Training wingbacks requires extra patience because of the very long haul of defense training, and defending being a slow training form because of the amount of players you can actually train. But this huge chunk of defense training also gives it a lot of profit potential. So you could say that it's likely to be a cycle that requires less initial funding because you can make more money along the way. Finally, the wingback player is a very strong and versatile position, and if you're really tight on money, you could even have your wingback be your designated man marker, set piece taker, and a strong player all in one if he's a powerful version of the wingback, for instance. That's all up to you. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about wingback training for now. Good luck if you are going to train wingbacks. It will take some patience. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon.